Hello again, everyone. It is Gordon Majak here, back with another episode of Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. And on a Saturday afternoon here, if you've been around the channel for a while, you've heard me say that I just sort of follow my muse when it comes to the selections here that I play. I love everything that I play, and I have a great connection to it. I don't play anything that I don't love or don't have a connection to, a personal or a spiritual or emotional connection, musical connection. And today is no exception. I follow my muse, and early this morning, someone happened to make a comment, and they mentioned the name Al Stewart, and it occurred to me, oh my God, here we go again with the Al Stewart. I have had Al Stewart in the back of my mind, I swear to God, for months. He's been on my playlist here, and for whatever reason, one reason or another, every time I come around to playing Al Stewart, I always end up at the last minute switching to something else. But someone in the comments mentioned Al Stewart, and I thought, you know what? I need to put a stop to this and finally get to some Al Stewart and tell you guys how much I dug this stuff back in the day and how much I still dig it. And just listening to it today to refamiliarize myself, holy cow, man, this stuff was so cool then, and it is still cool all these years later. I remember this, and I experienced this in real time back there in the fall of 1976. I remember this like it was yesterday, man. This was one of my favorite albums of not only that year, 1976, but there was just so many great records coming out in 76. I mean, how about Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life? And it just went on and on. Boz Scaggs had that Silk Degrees album that year. So many great records. The Steely Dan Royal Scam album, another classic. So much great music in 76. And here came Al Stewart in the fall of 1976 with this classic album, Year of the Cat. Man, I will never forget this one. Me and my friends must have played this album 1,000 times. Now, the thing is, there in the fall of 76, when this record came out, I was already familiar with Al Stewart. I had first learned of him about 2 years previous to the Year of the Cat record, and that was when he had an album out. I think the album was Past, Present, and Future. Al has a thing for time and history, so his albums have titles like Past, Present, and Future. And then I think the next album was Modern Times, and then I think we got to Year of the Cat. So Al has quite a fondness for history and the concept of time and things like that, and his album titles reflect that. So I learned of Al in 1974. As I said, his Past, Present, and Future album had a song on it that just blew me away, and it was a song that I first heard on the good old FM radio on the Album Rock station, and that was an 8+ minute epic by Al Stewart called Roads to Moscow. One of the great, just such a cinematic song, such a truly epic masterpiece from Al Stewart. That was from 1974. And as I said, when I heard that on the FM radio in 74, blew my mind. Now, and the rest of the album was pretty decent too. So then the following year, Al Stewart came out with his next album, which I believe was the Modern Times album. And that had a couple songs that got some airplay too, but they didn't really knock me out. The stuff I was hearing off of that album was okay, but it didn't really grab me quite like Roads to Moscow had. And when I get around to playing that on this channel, you'll hear why. Roads to Moscow is just unbelievable. Such a musical accomplishment for Al Stewart. But by the time 1976 came around, 2 years after Roads to Moscow, and Al Stewart came out with this album, Year of the Cat, I was more than ready to see what he was up to there in 1976. And boy, did I and everyone else that picked up this album ever get a pleasant surprise. What an impact this record had. I mean, this was just such a cool record from top to bottom, produced by the great Alan Parsons. And this album, just an absolutely sterling production, sterling, crystal clear audiophile sound as far as the engineering and the sounds of the instruments, the spaciousness. I mean, this is truly an audiophile recording there by Alan Parsons in 1976. And the Al Stewart experience, man, Al Stewart from top to bottom, the consummate pro an excellent songwriter, quite an advanced intellectual lyricist, if I say so myself. I think that's certainly one of Al's distinguishing signature features, right? Is his very intelligent lyrics. He's an extremely articulate guy. Seems like kind of a spiritual and thoughtful guy, but also clearly a romantic at heart. And he weaves so many cool elements into his songs. You know, it's like, is he pop? Is he rock? Is he folk? Is he kind of an acoustic adult alternative thing? What exactly is Al Stewart? But he crafted such a unique and cool sound for himself. And of course, his vocals with that really cool accent on his singing, that comes through in his singing. His band was always great. The songs were always on point. Those vocals, like I said, were always really cool and appropriate for every song. And Al had so many different textures going on back then. You know, he was bringing in his Beatle influences, and you could hear some of the other folk influences. And I'm sure maybe there was a little Bob Dylan influence in some of this stuff. And Al Stewart, man, made quite a splash there in 1976 with Year of the Cat. And today I am going to play two. This album is so good. I am going to play two songs for you. Yes, I am going to play the title track, Year of the Cat. That's going to be in our second video. I'm going to do two videos for two songs. And first of all, I'm going to play for you a song that after Year of the Cat was a big hit there in 76. Then we moved on to this particular tune. And this is where we are going to start with a song called On the Border. And you want to know how good this album was? Here's the single version of On the Border, right? And what does it say there on the flip side is a song called Flying Sorcery. And I'll tell you, Flying Sorcery in its own right is just a classic Al Stewart song. So even the flip side, the B-side of the second single from the album ends up being a great song, in my opinion. That's how deep and how cool this album was. And this is where we're going to start. We're going to hear On the Border, which is a classic in its own right there for Al Stewart in 1977, following the huge success of Year of the Cat. And then, of course, we will follow it up and get to the title track itself. But man, this one, you know, when you bought the album, you would have heard Year of the Cat on the radio, certainly on the FM and the FM, AM and the FM sides, right? Year of the Cat got played on AM radio, Top 40 radio, and it also got played on the album rock, classic rock stations, right? Well, if you bought the album based on having heard Year of the Cat on the radio, and you got that album home and you put that record on, this was the second song you heard. And man, this is when this record really took off. Not only for Al Stewart's career, but certainly in the experiences of millions of listeners who were listening to this at home and going, okay, Al's got some stuff on this record. This is worth paying attention to. And there may not be a bad tune on this album. One of the deeper and more tasty albums from the 1970s. It's Al Stewart's classic Year of the Cat record. And the second song on the album from 1976, On the Border. And check out the super tasty. And I'm just going to say this is a legendary, not just tasty, this is a legendary acoustic guitar solo performance here you will hear throughout this song by the great Peter White, a longtime, he's a star in his own right in the New Age and jazz music communities. But certainly one element of that signature Al Stewart song there from the 70s was the incredible guitar work of the great Peter White, who was for a while there a member of the Al Stewart band before going out on his own, and of course to much acclaim and much success throughout his career. And no wonder why, because this guy is an absolute guitar wizard. And back there in 1976, his playing on this song jumped out of the radio and jumped off the album. Peter White on guitar, Al Stewart doing everything else. It is On the Border. Oh, those strings. Great band. This band kicks butt.
Fishing boats go out across the heaping water, smuggling guns and miles across century, telling us that we're standing on the border. In the islands where I grew up, nothing seems the same. It's just the patterns that remain, an empty shell. But there's a strangeness in the air you feel too well. Across the Spanish border, the wind whips up the waves so loud. The ghostman sails among the clouds, turns the rifles into silver on the border. On the border. On the border. On the border.
Man, I forgot some of those lyrics. Well, the lyrics, of course, by Al Stewart. Always interesting and always thought-provoking. And man, those acoustic guitar runs by the great Peter White. And of course, as I said, Peter was a part of Al's career there for a good little while and appeared on a lot of his albums, and he always just contributes such tasty guitar work, really state-of-the-art guitar work back there in the day by Peter White. And Peter White went on to much-deserved fame and fortune in the world of contemporary jazz. This is 1976, so yeah, by the 80s and into the 90s and certainly into the 2000s, Peter White still doing it and still doing it at a very high level. And Al Stewart, just such a unique sound. You know, his voice with the accent is such a unique sound. He's got the very thoughtful lyrics, so intelligent, and he's always got some history, and he's weaving some intrigue in his lyrics. And certainly a fine musician in his own right. And as we'll hear here in the next video, in the next song, the title track for Year of the Cat, man, his band, well, you could hear it in this one too, right? His band, just super, super tasty all the way across the board. Really talented musicians. And Alan Parsons, man, does this still stand out all these years later? What a sterling production and engineering job by Alan Parsons and the team there. This is just like a freaking audiophile record. You can just hear it crystal clear, really, really beautifully recorded. Just quite a lush and beautiful recording. Such great presence in these instruments, man. You can almost feel that acoustic guitar when Peter White nails some of those notes there. Pretty cool job all the way around. Now, you know, I got to see... So this album, I was aware of Al Stewart, as I said, in 74. This album came out in 76, or the fall of 76. And wow, just an immediate, what a great record. And I saw him on this tour, and in fact, on the 45th anniversary edition CD, they did like a deluxe package, 3 CDs and a DVD or something. The 45th anniversary version of this album features the bulk of, if not the entire show of his 1976 concert appearance in Seattle. And I was at that show that was captured, obviously, probably a soundboard recording there by Al's crew. And that entire show, if not the whole show, featured on the anniversary edition, and I was there. I think that was October of 76, right after the album came out, and that was the first time I got to see Al Stewart in concert. The whole crew, he brought the whole band right off of the album, all the same guys from the album, including Peter White, all of those guys, just playing those epic, legendary parts. Man, this album's so tasty, so melodic, so much cool stuff going on from the whole band. And yeah, I got to see him there on that tour. And then, of course, this album was so huge. That went all the way around into 1977. He was still putting out singles like On the Border. And then into the following year, 1978, with his Time Passages album. And I believe I saw him again on that tour. So I think I've seen him. I know I saw him twice in the 70s. And then I saw him again maybe 8 or 10 years ago. obviously here just in the 2000s. So I've actually seen Al Stewart 3 times because I'm pretty sure I got to see him on that Time Passages tour as well. But there was nothing like the first time. Certainly, the Year of the Cat tour, man, and that band, what a crack outfit Al Stewart brought to town with him. And I think if I'm not mistaken, he was at the Seattle Center Arena, probably about a 6,000 seat venue. And he had some good sounds cooking that night. We are coming back with the title track of this great album. I just got inspired, man. Somebody mentioned Al Stewart, and I thought, okay, you know what, man? We're going to do some Al Stewart. Let's do 2 in a row, back to back. Catch me up a little bit with Al, because he is in my top 100. Love this guy. He's got some cool stuff. We'll play a lot more of it on the channel, but I wanted to jump in here with a couple today. See you in the next one. In the Year of the Cat, we're coming back. It's a great album. Wait till you hear it.